What's going on, guys? Mike Gastin here, and today I want to talk about something that's been on my mind a little bit. It's kind of troubling me. Now, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer or a Cassandra and run around crying that the sky is falling, but I do think if we look around, the sky is actually falling. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the effects of COVID-19 on the economy, especially small business, but more specifically, I want to talk about the government reaction to COVID-19 that is affecting small businesses. Now, it would be easy to talk about the short-term effects, things like people losing their jobs, folks in the restaurant industry, the service industry, working for mom and pop shops, losing their jobs, these business owners taking terrible losses, and in many cases having to close their businesses for good. We should talk about those things. Those are real things affecting real lives. There is untold wealth being wiped out as we speak. And as we think of wealth, we think of people living the high life, living well, living beyond our means, living the dream that we can't have. But truly, wealth is material abundance. And these small businesses create a large amount of material abundance for our society, not just the owners, but for their employees, the communities they're rooted in, and so on. It would be easy to talk about these short-term effects because real people are losing their jobs. Real people are facing financial and material hardships like they never have before. And what's unique about this right now is having the economy shut down, the lockdowns, the shutdowns, being deemed non-essential, going through all of that and now getting ready to enter into that again in the U.S. leaves people with no hope, no prospects. There aren't many jobs out there, especially if you make $50,000 or less. You are in a strata of the economy where there really aren't a lot of options, and you're the ones taking it in the neck the hardest through all this. People making $100K more, high-level, high-paid people are doing fantastic through all this, quite frankly. It is the people in the middle and the lower end of our economy that are taking the hit. It would be easy to talk about all those things because those things are real. Those things are visceral. These are affecting people's lives in ways that we don't even want to admit to ourselves, but it's going on right now. But I want to talk about something actually beyond that. I want to talk about an effect that all this is going to have on us that I think if we stop and take a moment and consider it, will get our attention. My hope is that we can start talking about this because I'm not hearing anyone talk about this situation. And what is that? Well, you have to understand something about the American economy. Now, I can't speak to other economies, but the American economy relies heavily on small and privately owned businesses. Now, for the purposes of this discussion, I'm defining a small business as any business under 500 employees. If you have 500 employees or fewer, that's a small business. That means it could be a solopreneur, someone working out of their home, providing a service, a consultant maybe, a freelance designer, all the way up to a manufacturing plant with hundreds of employees. In every instance, these businesses create wealth. They put children through college, food on tables, help people buy homes, take vacations. They enrich their communities in a significant way. And I say that because small businesses, 500 or fewer employees, represents almost half of the American economy. 47.5% of the American economy, historically, recent history, has been these kinds of businesses, these small businesses. That's half the American economy. Now, if you look at privately owned businesses, because not all privately owned businesses are small, they represent just over 80% of the American economy. Now, it's easy to make the argument that these are critical elements to a working society, to our working society. You can't have what we have in America without these small and privately owned businesses. But it's not just an economic, it's not just a material, a money thing. These companies represent a level of liberty and freedom. Each one of these privately owned businesses, each one of these small businesses represents a dream. They represent someone's vision, someone's desire, their heart. They could represent generations of a family working hard to build something of substance and value for themselves, for their children, and for their community. Each one of these businesses represents someone who had a vision and was willing to take a risk and put themselves out there and created something real. They had not only the courage to do that, but they were given the freedom to do that. And the thing about these small businesses, that freedom, that liberty, that courage, those values that make those businesses thrive continues through those companies. Those values are represented, they're manifested on every level, every day. The employees live those values, the customers benefit from those values, the communities they're rooted in benefit from those values and often hold the same values. There's something special about privately owned and small businesses. They represent the best in American liberty, the best in American ingenuity, the best in American freedom and values and hard work and wealth creation. And the problem with the governmental response to COVID-19, both from a federal, from a state level, from a municipal level, from every level of the American society, the way the state has responded has been to shut these businesses down and to overly penalize them. In many cases, a mom and pop shop offering very similar products to a Walmart is deemed non-essential. While the Walmart gets a walk, they get a pass. They can continue to sell the very same things that are sold in that local family hardware store that was shut down. You can still go into a Walmart and buy lunch at the lunch counter, but somehow the sandwich shop down the street was shut down as non-essential. Now look, you can argue about the importance of containing COVID-19, of beating the virus and so on. I don't want to make this an argument about COVID-19. COVID-19 is not what is hurting these businesses. It is the government's response and the societal fear that is killing these businesses. Now, let me tell you why this is so important. Let me tell you why we should care. Nazi Germany was a corporatist society. It was a corporatist economy. And what that means isn't that they were pro-business, that they were pro-corporations, that they were free market guys over there in Nazi Germany. No, corporatism is when you have the government and large corporations in bed with one another. They are integrated into one another. They control one another to the degree that the corporations are working so closely with the government that they are willing and happy and active in implementing the government's programs and helping further the government's agenda. If the state wants to eliminate some people from the economy, these corporations will do so. In Nazi Germany, if you weren't a party member, if you didn't hew to the party values, if you didn't say the right things and lift up your arm to the Führer every morning as you went to work, you didn't get a job at Volkswagen. You didn't get a job at Mercedes or BMW or any of the other large German corporations that were in bed with the Nazis during the war. You see, corporatism is an integration, is a hand-in-glove partnership between corporations, large organizations, large entities, and the state. And what these large entities get in return for implementing governmental state-level policies is a place at the table. They get to enrich themselves. They get the government contracts. They get the preferential treatment. Tax laws are written to benefit them. Liability laws are written to cover them. When they end up in court, they get a pass. The small mom and pop shop is at a loss. They cannot compete because the government, the state, is in the corner of the large corporation. And why does this matter for us in America? Well, the fact is that the American economy, the American society has been becoming, over time, over generations, more and more corporatist. We see it now. We've seen now for decades how large corporations will happily implement governmental social programs. They will provide benefits based on what the government says. They will implement things like equality programs and anti-racism programs and anti-sexual discrimination programs. Now, you might say there's nothing wrong with that. Those are good things. We should want equality in the workplace. We should want gender equality. We should want racial equality and so on. And you might say that might be good in the moment to try to make things fair, to try to help people level up. But what happens when the large entities of the society are hand in glove with the state? What happens when the state goes sideways? What happens when the state takes away your liberty? Now, in an economy where half the economy is run, is owned, is made up of privately owned small businesses, and when 80% of the economy, even large businesses, are privately owned, what happens is you have a check and a balance. You, as an employee, as a worker, have options. You don't have to go work for the behemoth. If you don't like what they're doing over there at Google, you can go work for an engineering firm down the street that employs 50 people and pays really well and does great work. If you don't like what you're seeing at Honeywell or any of these large companies, fill in the blank, you can go find a company of smaller size that fits your values, shares your vision, and does work that you can find fulfilling. Now, there's something about a large company, and I'm not anti-large, I'm not anti-success, but large companies, who's the owner? Whose values are integrated into the business? Where do you find meaning? Large companies are very dehumanizing. We end up being a cog. We end up being this kind of depersonalized, dehumanized cog in a large machine. We get lost. Large culture is not typically good. They work hard to try to overcome that. But the reality is large corporate culture has a bad rap for a reason. There's some truth in that. It's not just a stigma. It's not just a stereotype. There's some truth in that. And there's some people that thrive in a large culture. And I'm not trying to knock that. I'm not saying they should be done away with. But what we have now in our economy, and the American economy, is special because we have a check and balance system. We have the freedom and the liberty of private small industry. You can go out there with a vision, with your values, with your beliefs, take a risk, and build something special, and no one can stop you. At least that was until about February or March of 2020. Now that's questionable. Now that ability, that right, has been taken away from you, seemingly temporarily. But this isn't a matter of just waiting until we're allowed to get back to work, until the moratorium or martial law is lifted, or the governors start to realize that the threat is past and we can all get back, or that there's a vaccine. What happens when the board is redrawn? What happens when the balance, the ratio between private businesses, small businesses, and large corporations is reoriented? Right now, it's about 50-50, small business and large corporations. What happens when it becomes 30-70, 60-40, 20-80? What happens when large corporations become the norm? What happens to you, the worker? What happens to you in your neighborhood, in your community, when the small businesses are gone and all that is left are the large corporations that are tied closely to the state? What does that mean for us? I think we need to be talking about this. You know, this talk of the current president, I should say, Donald Trump, not current for long, of him being a dictator. Oh my gosh, he's going to take over. He's a dictator. He's a racist. He's all these terrible things. He's going to take over. He's going to destroy America. Totalitarianism is more dangerous than dictatorship. I think this whole talk about Donald Trump as a dictator is a distraction. You can hate him, you can find him disgusting, you can find him repulsive, or you can think he's an idiot, or you can think he's an evil genius. It doesn't matter. It's a distraction. You see, when the state is able to control the major levers of a society, when it can control and influence the media, when it can control and influence the economy, when it can control and influence entertainment and religion and education. Right now, over 95% of the American population is educated in a state-run school. This is, secondary level education. This is public schooling for kids in grade school and middle school and high school. I'm not talking about college necessarily. But the state has its fingers in more and more elements of our society. Take healthcare, for example. More and more the state is taking over healthcare. What you see is this creeping totalitarianism, which means that the state is involved in the totality of our lives, the totality of our society. The state touches and may even control every element of our society and the human experience. That is problematic. That is troublesome. That is dangerous. And so I want to exhort you to take a moment and think about what's going on here. Yes, the loss of jobs, the loss of wealth is heartbreaking. We need to do something about this now. Not just have the government pump more money into the economy, but let the American people, the American entrepreneurs, the American workers do what they do best. Let us take our health into our own hands. Let us put ourselves out there and build something special. Let us create wealth for those that we love, that we care about, our neighbors, our communities. Let us work. And let us keep the balance of power healthy. Let's keep Americans free. Let's avoid corporatism. I don't want to live in a world where my only options for working are for a large corporation that is mandating that we all adhere to government policy at every turn, every moment of the day. I don't want to take my government mandated break. I don't want to do my government mandated safety training or re-education through my work. I mean, you think about how much time each one of us spends doing our work. It takes up most of our life. Most of our waking time is spent working. If we are stripped, if our economy is weakened such that we don't have as many privately run businesses, we don't have as many small businesses and are able to keep going, those options are off the table. What ends up happening for us? We have the option to either A, work for a large corporation, B, work for a not-for-profit, or C, work for some government entity. Those are your three options. When small business is gone, when small business is severely weakened and not a significant part of our economy, that's what we're left with. So I want to exhort you today. I want to encourage you today. Think about this. Do everything you can to support local businesses. Support them. This isn't just like a feel good. This isn't just change your avatar on Facebook to say that you've helped or do some video of you pouring water on top of your head. Do the thing. Help small businesses and make your voice heard. Let the government know this is unacceptable. Let's stop the creeping totalitarianism. Let's stop the shift of power towards corporatism. Let's keep our society free and good. Guys, I hope this has been encouraging to you. I hope this has been thought-provoking. I'd love to know what you think in the comments. Whether you agree or disagree, I'd be happy to engage you. Just throw a comment down below. If you wouldn't mind, give me a like. This helps the YouTube algorithm know that this is content we're sharing. And if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button. Guys, I love you all, and I'll catch you in the next video.